don't have the level of resistance of a human spontaneously gender transitioning.
Started with the frogs first, most sensitive to the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, frogs were switching sexual disposition, actually gaining some of the gonads, actually growing wombs because of the exposure in the soil to the lexicon of chemicals that were coming out of the sky via the governmental chemtrails, which are harmless, according to the federal government.
For the last, ever since the first Trump election, they've been spraying stuff to try to clean that up. And this is why you have it looking like rocks falling out the sky.
Mm.
It's binding agents that bind to those chemicals to get them out of the air. In some places, your snow, it looked like styrofoam because it's binding agents.
Yeah.
In some places, they even literally raining rocks. Well, all that's the stuff that they using to clean up the chemtrails. Well, we don't know. We out here going about our daily life, la-di-da-di-da. Somebody was terraforming the earth for a new species to inhabit it.
Absolutely. Giving us the
Right.
blueprint in social media for us to accept certain types of new physiology, them, they, Zerzy, all kinds of new wording to accept a new kind of, geoengineered life form, or
Yep.
a life form that was being introduced here, like the other life forms that came previously.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So when we looking at the totality of the picture, and we come to now, what's taking place now, based on what historically has happened, their days is up. That's it for them. It's over. Now we seeing the rollout of the ones that's sending these orbs ahead of them before they get here. The government desensitizing the people with drones the size of SUVs.
Absolutely.
And you know this because Donald J came on and said they know exactly where they at. If they came out of a garage, the military can go right in that garage.
Absolutely.
They know where they came from. They know where they went. That's the drones, but that ain't the orbs.
But you notice that they purposefully created a new term called UAP to take away the verbiage UFOs, which is classic. And they make sure they keep saying drones, but they don't tell you these light ships. And some are diamond-esque type of macabre looking ships. They don't speak about that, and they don't tell you why there's plasma shooting at the orbs, shooting some of them down. I mean, not the orbs, shooting at the drones, shot a few of them down.
So when you get to the biblical description of the angel and they draw the picture and they give you the Dyson sphere, that's what the orbs are. Those are satellites. Those are reconnaissance satellites that is sent ahead of the fleets before they get to their destination. Wherever they coming from, if they coming from the inner earth, if they coming from a parallel dimension, if they coming from outer space, if they coming from a different time zone, wherever they coming from, they send those orbs, those Dyson spheres, as satellites. And all of those, what appear to be eyes, are just cameras. They give them a 360-degree panoramic view of the layout before they come. So when they come, they know where they're going. They know what they're about to enter into before they get there.
And the orbs are actually placed on, we've noticed and documented, they're over every landmass, and it's usually one, if it's a smaller landmass, so you'll see the orbs positioned there. So they're definitely documenting the area and getting a scope of what's going on. And the other places like Jersey, maybe where there's more nuclear facilities and more, that's where the drones are erecting in more masses to try to accommodate and try to cloak the others that are here. Yeah.
So let me point out something since you brought up New Jersey. Noble Drew Ali went into what's called the Moorish Zionist Jewish temple and discovered the magic that they was using to subjugate the people of the land. He came out of, this was in New Jersey, in Newark, New Jersey. He came out of the Moorish Zionist temple and established the Moorish Science Temple. Right? Because it was a direct confrontation to the Moorish Zionist Jews. right? These more Zionist Jews is niggas.
Which is Sephardic, just FYI. Sometimes they call themselves Sephardic.
The Sephardi are the Spanish converts, pale skinned Spanish converts. The original more Zionist Jews was nappy head niggas, right? And they live across the land in gated communities, and they talk about us like a dog, metaphorically speaking. And they don't like us. And the only time we gonna see them is when it's time for them to send in what we call operatives to interfere with some progressive movement we have.
That's right. And they start working side by side, looking like you, but they're not you.
And maybe their famous thing is kill Whitey, but we don't know he Whitey until we read Black's Law 5th edition, meaning a free white person in law. It mean a Moor. So when you read Secret Relation Between Blacks and Jews, printed by the Nation of Islam Research Team, you will realize some of the places where these Jews wasn't no pale faces into the 1900s.
Nope, they were all brown.
Then, I can show you another one.
Yeah.
This book right here is called Empty Wagon.
Empty Wagon.
Oh. This is a pale-faced Jewish rabbi. The subtitles say Zionist Journey from Identity Crisis to Identity Theft.
Ooh.
The book is about...
What year was it written? What year was it written? Can you see?
Let me look.
I'm sorry, because I went to school with Dr. Jeffrey, so I wanted to know.
You Dr. Jeffries.
Which is friends with Malachi Z. York, yeah. He was my professor in college.
You mean Dr. Leonard Jeffries?
Yes. Isn't it synchronistic?
Yeah, that's something right. You know, Dr. Bean wrote a book called We the Black Jacobins.
Yes.
Right. So if
you can find the data, don't worry. I'm going to ask you later because I want to find out if it syncs with something else. Yeah.
It's right here in the front of the book. (2020) 2018, 2020 was the revise.
Okay.
Anyway, so when you see in New Jersey being the first place where these drones are sighted.
Hold on, before you go on, if we're going to reference something that some people got to remember is that in one of the old movies, it was Twilight Zone, or was it The Outer Limits? It was Twilight Zone. It's called To Serve Man. The first place they show in the movie is New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey. And just another reference, there's a gentleman I knew who was the father of my friend who saw their first UFO over Newark, New Jersey, and a giant hiding behind a window, behind a building. So Newark, New Jersey is a hub for something else. Definitely.
So the connection to Newark is the site of Shakur. That's why she in exile.
Okay. Wait.
Okay, so
you got me excited here. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, she's the queen of New Jersey. That's her territory. That's her land.
Oh.
So she's in exile. So they running amok and disregarding her as if she's irrelevant to the land. She won with the land. She from the land.
That's right.
Right. So we all screaming hands off Assata. So the first thing I want to tell Trump, tell that governor to give her a full pardon.
Well, remember Trump also, and I don't know if you remember, because we know that she was last seen, obviously she had extradition, she had political asylum in Cuba. From what I understand, and she's been relocated somewhere else with the protection of perhaps Russia. But what I'm concerned with is that when Trump came back into power in 2016, I don't know which Trump, his first thing was to put a bounty on her head again. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, well, that was to bring attention to Benghazi.
Okay, okay.
Right. Now, when you go look at the images of Benghazi and you want to know where Tupac is, then go look at the images and come back and we had this discussion again.
Oh, okay. Oh.
So you got this brother with these Arabs shooting up the embassy in Benghazi. They can't tell you that they know Tupac ain't dead. That changes the whole liberation dynamic of our people if we see that they know Tupac is alive. Right? They asked Puffy about it since he been locked up. They say, Puffy, we heard you put $1 million bounty on Tupac head. He said, Tupac ain't dead. And they was like, what? Where he at?
We heard it from before. So, and also there were sightings of him. So we presumed that most likely he did one of those, no sight, no sight, no
So
see.
in the art of war, when the ruler or the general is believed to have an assassination order, it's also in the guerrilla warfare of Mao Zedong, who faked his death at least 6 times. That if, in order to throw off the strategic value of the opposing force, you feign the death of the strategist, and now they can't adjust for him as a strategist. So they can't make a contingency in the warfare for this particular general. It's like having Hannibal, but you don't know he's still alive.
I understand. Yeah. You're chasing a ghost. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she said chasing the ghost, and the irony of it is he got a song called Ghosts. Do you believe in ghosts? Real live black ghosts?
What? See that? It's all in the lexicon. It's all in the lexicon.
Pre-scripted. Tupac is the Tupac Amaru reincarnate. He inherits the war of Tupac Amaru. Whoever he was fighting as Tupac Amaru, as a Mississippian from the Panther Totem Clan, when he's born, because of his genetic rank, he inherits the war that was given to Tupac Amaru. Just because they kill one of us don't mean we're not going to send somebody into the future to come back on our behalf.
That's right.
Just like I inherited the war Chief Pontiac against the French. Right? And just like Divine Insight inherited the Haitian Revolutionary War of Toussaint Louverture. We don't want this shit.
That's right.
We don't want it. But we got to fight the war if we want to be free.
Well,
what we don't want war. Do we want to be free, or do we want to be slaves? Do we want to be go along to get along slaves, or do we want to fight for freedom?
Well, my concept is we're living in a simulation, so you're always going to get a character to match what's necessary. It's always a program, so you got to get someone in. If one's taken out, that same character in another form has to come in to complete the mission. That's just my on it. Yeah.
Now, they thought that when they froze Tookie, because they didn't execute him, they put him in cryostasis.
I could see that.
And then, because he was what you call persona non grata in the war. You're not supposed to take out one of the big 3 chiefs. Most of us on the land right now don't know who the big 3 chiefs was.
They're not, but they can isolate them, they can encapsulate them, but they're not allowed to kill them. It's part of their agreements, yeah.
So when they gave him the death penalty, instead of putting him to death, they narcotized him.
Yeah.
And then they put him in cryostasis.
I could see that, yeah.
Now, they thawed him out, I think in 2020 or 2021, they thawed him out. Because he had been frozen for so long, he was classified as dead. You can't kill him twice. He walking around between 2 places, Area 51 and Raven Rock, Colorado, in the underground bunker.
That's why they probably flooding out Area 51 not too long ago. Yeah.
That's where he came. That's where they had him stored at when he was frozen. Right? Now, Now that he thawed out, you gonna know because he gonna come to you, and I'm gonna tell you how you gonna know it's him. Look for the lightning bolts and the walking lightning because that's his signature.
Okay.
When he come to you, he's a guerrilla chief, so he
So,
he
okay.
he
So I
might
can
be a
track.
whole gorilla come to you in the psychic connection as walking lightning gorilla.
Well, I figure maybe I've been prepped with you and the others previously. Yeah.
Okay, now the other two chiefs, you got the Tuki is 44 blue.
44 blue.
44 blue. 44 being angel.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. What we know is Chief Malik Jeff Ford, Angel Bay is 44 red. He's the one supposed to be out here kicking these in their ass.
Mm-hmm.
His tribe was busted up by COINTELPRO before he was able to realize the totality of his mission. They had to get him where they can put him under and make him a bond servant. They can put him under their jurisdictional authority.
And I'm sure they found out who he was and whatever his mission was.
They knew who he was from birth.
Yeah, Project Looking Glass, they can see the variations within who comes in. They know, kind of like Terminator.
They've been following me my whole life.
I know that's right. I know.
I've been knowing they following me because I done had times where I be walking down the street 3 a.m. in the middle of the night in Chicago and don't nobody know me in this area. And then I feel like somebody watching me. Who the hell is this watching me? Right? And I'm looking around and I don't see nobody, but I know they there.
They are.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
It's a book called The Sense of Being Stared At.
You can feel the dagger of sight on someone, whether they're cloaking themselves, putting in invisibility. They watch certain people, and I know the legitimacy of someone by the attacks they get. Because I'm the queen of attacks on YouTube. I love the attention. Let me give a shout out to YouTube for being the biggest hater. I mean, they attack me for nothing. I could say the word clone, I get attacked. But usually by default, because one can recognize real by the amount of attention and also attack and the types of attack. So when they try to take away from people looking at someone who can give them value and just lead them like a Moses into an awareness, they'll attack them personally. Welcome to the world of social media. Okay.
And that's also part of the verification of your mission. If you don't have no opposition,
you're not worthy of.
You're not doing something right.
It's true.
But when they coming at your head like they came for you, like they came for me, and a whole lot of others, you doing something right because they want you to stop doing it at all costs, and they gonna pull out all the stops to shut you up.
That's right. Yeah.
They can't figure out because I know they MO. So I was able to systematically use social media and don't form in congregated groups.
Listen, you don't have to. Yes, I know.
I know they MO, I know they pattern, I know how they operate, and I've been staying just outside of they operating procedure, they SOP. Right? So I already know how they move. So I'm moving right on about their way. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing because we about to take this SOB over and there ain't nothing they can do about it.
Well, now there's targets on everybody's back who was trying to cause any sort of like ripple, because that's just basically going to ripple back into their direction. If you didn't take us out already, you're gonna have a problem.
Yeah. So now all of the ones that was attacked and the people that was doing the attacking, the ones that was the frauds, they gonna be drug out. Yeah. All we gotta do is sit back and watch. We don't gotta do nothing. We the chosen ones. And the reason why we chosen, because we chose ourselves to accept our path to do our work. Don't nobody want to do this shit for real.
Absolutely not.
This is look, it's when you talking to people, right? I tell them I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. Right? I can show it to you, but I can't give you the realization. And I'm fully aware that smart people sound totally bat fucking insane to a dummy. right? So now we looking at okay, so where you fit in the category. Is you the one I explained it to? They want me to understand it for you? I can't understand it for you. Right? Or is you the one that think I'm insane because you a total idiot? Yeah.
I hope someone, yeah. Did you all receive? Okay.
So when we take these responsibilities on, people think this come with glamour like a celebrity. It don't come with none of that.
No. It
This
comes
is
with a
the
lot of it comes with a lot of paranoia, a lot of trying to evade things, trying to, relegate your life around certain types of, what you perceive challenges or attacks.
yeah, like you might be looking at somebody pointing a gun at you, and you tell somebody next to you, he pointing a gun at me. You know, why you think somebody? You always think somebody trying to do something to you.
Exactly.
I'm looking at him pointing this gun at me. No, you
They have
just
no concept.
paranoid. I'm not paranoid. I know what I'm looking at.
Yeah. And it's the same as someone who sees a craft and one who doesn't. If your perception
Mhm.
of reality is higher at a certain grade or hierarchy and someone doesn't see it, they will think that you're insane for seeing something that they're unable to see.
Or if they're going to come up with a cognitively dissonant explanation to try to explain it away because they
It's your
can't explain it.
contacts. Your contacts are dirty. You fell asleep. You were partying last night. You were drinking something. So now your contacts are foggy. That's why you're seeing the glitz and glitter in the sky. And even, or, you're suffering from depression. You broke up with your boyfriend and now you just, delirious. One or the other. Yeah.
That's what Prince say. Let's go crazy. Let's get wild. He had a song called Delirious too.
That's right. That's right.
And he wasn't just talking.
Well, Prince did, I personally think he didn't transition because he was doing telepathic messages years ago, but later on there was someone
He got a
connected.
secondary mansion higher up in the woods in Minnesota, and he ain't coming out to this over with.
What? I know that's right. And he
Michael
said
Jackson got Michael Jackson originally he had out in the Philippines, and then he bought a mansion in I think it was Montana in the woods. And then they tried to send some investigators in there, and his security, he had like a military style security or private military.
Yeah.
And they told him, you're not getting in. And the feds were like, oh, we coming in. And they was like, okay. And they looked up and there was soldiers everywhere. They were like, you know what? We're going to take a rain check on that because we remember Ruby Ridge.
Yeah.
We remember Ruby Ridge, and they was not as armed as you guys. So they don't want, they know what's going on.
They do. They do.
They
And they
know what's
gave us
going on.
enough. They never, and also they gave us the tools and a lot of the information via their albums, especially the last ones. So if you listen to the last albums with the Rainbow Children, with Prince's last album, he gives a lot of messages, subliminal messages that he gave us to be able to maneuver through these times. Same with Michael Jackson. So big up to Prince, formerly known as Prince, and Michael Jackson. We can't play his songs because they blocked us.
Dude, that's Mississippian culture to put codes in music, to tell messages in music.
I love it. I love it. It's the
I
best
got a song called White Man's World, and he say, they tell me it's the white man I should fear, but it's my own kind doing all the killing here.
Hello. It's the
He's
black
telling you right there, they look like us, but they not us.
I agree.
And if anybody didn't get it, DMX came right behind him and said they don't know who we be. But that don't mean we don't know each other.
Yeah.
Like I don't know ODB is Chief Crazy Horse.
That's why they lump us all together, and people don't realize it's purposefully done so they can get the agents in there and they can place them strategically around you. They'll sound like you, drink like you. One thing I know, this is what I found out, is because a lot of them aren't rhythmic. That's another something I found out. They're not rhythmic because they're not connected to this terrain. So a lot of them are just non-harmonic. So they'll do things that's off, like things that are not, like you'll look at them, it's like the movement will be off, the way they drink is to be off, the way that they say things or think is off. It's not harmonic. So, because I don't know if they're geoengineered, they could be cloned, they could be syntheticas, or they could just be part of that non-harmonic clan that doesn't come from here.
So, the ones that, like, I got a friend living in Grand Rapids right now named Fadia. Fadia is from the Mindi tribe in Africa.
Mm.
When I was locked up, like, I know all of the guys that's around me is from here. I can tell by, the energy, demeanor, everything. Fadia come walking out the building because they wanted me to meet him. As soon as he came out, I said, "Who that nigga? He ain't one of us."
You could
The
feel it.
whole yard stopped and looked at me like, "How you know he ain't from over here?" I said,
feel
"That nigga not from America. I don't know where he from, but he ain't from here."
Yeah.
So they called him over there. He sat down at the table. We started talking. I said, "Man, where you from? You ain't one of us. You ain't from over here."
Yeah.
He said, "No, I'm from Africa."
Yeah.
I said, "You don't talk like no African." He said, "That's because I was raised over here, but my mom and my daddy's from Africa. I'm Mindy from Africa, from Sierra Leone."
Yeah.
I'm sitting there looking at him like, they just shocked that off sight I knew he wasn't one of us.
Well, you could pick up on the frequency, and the vibration's totally different.
Yeah. And he kind of turned out to be one of my best friends too.
Good. Yeah.
But
it's good to
we
recognize.
talked a lot because he was curious about how I was able to tell that he wasn't from over here. Because I was the first person that had said it to him. I said, "Man, I know my people wherever I see them at, and I know who ain't one of us."
It's true. It's true. Not
Right.
everybody, well, they could, maybe they don't say it, but some people may be muted and can't necessarily register it. But if you're with a certain state of awareness, you'll always know when people outside, even if they look like you know they're not connected to you genetically. And I always say to brown people who are suffering from Stockholm syndrome of thinking all brown people are them, I say, does a German think he's a Dutchman? Does a Dutchman think he's a Frenchman? Does a Frenchman think he's from England? Does an Englishman think he's from Norway? No, they're very different. They have different, even if they look alike, they have different genetic coding, different imprints, different vibrations, different cultural bases. The only people that they lump together as brown people, and that's purposefully done so that we keep people in our mix that are our enemies, and that we're never able to really register when an enemy's close to us because they always make them look like us. I always tell people on line, the biggest and most baddest wolves in my life have always been women of color who look like me. They don't send other women to attack me. They'll only send women that look and have more of a similar phenotype so that I'll be sublimed with being able to register if they're my enemy or not.
Yeah. And occasionally they throw one in that looking like a man. She looking like a man. But anyway, somebody put in the comments, all kinfolk ain't skinfolk. All skinfolk ain't kinfolk. Our ancestors was telling us that for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not just a catchphrase.
No.
Because the George Washington Challenge said at the end of 200 years, we not going to know them from us and us from them. What side of the water we from and what side of the water they from.
Absolutely. That's why it's good to know vibration. Vibration, your kin, your vibratory family is your kin. You have to recognize that. And if you aren't able to do it because you're not harmonic enough, you're doing, if you always have disharmony around you, it's going to be hard to recognize an enemy because you're going to be used to that disharmony. So it's always good to have, even if it's one or two people, you don't need to have a posse of people. You just have to have one or two people that are kin energetically.
Culturally, we love to be around each other culturally.
We do.
But when this war was waged against us, it made us hate us. And as Bobby Hemming would say, niggas and flies, niggas and flies. Flies eat shit, niggas tell lies. The more I'm around niggas, the more I like flies. But this goes back to what's really going on in America that most people can't see with the naked eye. You got two groups of melanated beings fighting for America. The ones that's from here and the ones that ain't from here.
That's right. If you notice,
all of these high-ranking pink folks is aware of the conflict, so they try to steer clear using racism as they shield to keep that keeps the two different groups that's at war fighting each other in their own community, right? And then they get to reap what they call white privilege of staying out of the conflict.
Yeah.
But white privilege don't answer for poor white trash.
Oh, no.
White privilege don't answer for trailer park trash.
There's no such thing as white privilege. That's just a
That's
concept.
right. But see, that's the ideology used to make us think that we at war with pale faces.
Hmm.
But the white man is not pale skinned.
No, no, it's bait and switch.
Right. But they
Yes.
used to use the pale skins to block the institutions: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, and war,
Mm.
and health, and to dominate us in sex. So by them using that carrot on the stick, we always thinking we fighting pale faces, but it's this nappy head,
It's the brown devils. It's the black
extra
devils.
dark, yep, black
Yeah.
devil standing here telling me, if I was you, I wouldn't let him talk to you like that. You
Hmm.
should shoot him.
Hmm. Hmm.
Why should I shoot him when I can just beat his ass?
Yeah. And then walk away and just
Yeah, and then
you
if
know
he
what I
don't
mean?
like it, we could fight tomorrow and the next day and the next day. That's how the tribes are.
Yeah.
The warring tribes, we used to box each other. That was how we established our hierarchy amongst our peers,
Hmm.
by being able to box. They
My
call
ex,
it knocking.
yeah, because my ex from the Bronx, they used to do body. First time I seen it, when you watching males in their true primal state, you'd be like,
Mhm.
oh, and they just punch it and they friends. It's like body, and you just have to stay there and grunt. And that was part of just like almost like a call to like
Initiation.
virility. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yep.
and I seen that there was no fighting, nobody's mad. They drink at 40s afterwards, so everybody's cool.
I
But
grew up body punching.
mhm.
We used to body punching. We used to grow up body punching. My father called it knocking because they used to do it when they was teenagers. But what we do is we get our skills up by punching, but no face.
Just
But
body.
everything else is open season:
Yeah.
ribs, shoulders, arms,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
back.
Yeah.
All that's open game. Just you can't hit it from the neck up. But by the time you get done getting in a few of them, you gonna know how to handle yourself.
It's building
Right.
resiliency, right?
Yeah.
Resiliency.
And it's teaching you the skills to defense.
Hmm.
It's like sparring in a boxing ring. Only you don't got a ring and you don't got no gloves.
That's right. Yeah.
It's same thing.
Yeah.
They do it in all combat sports. They have sparring sessions.
I see
You
that.
can't develop your skills without a valid competitor on the other side of you pushing you to be better,
That's right. But now,
exploiting your weaknesses so you can become stronger in the weak places.
but now you have young men who are scared to be hit and mothers who are saying, don't touch my son, don't hurt him. You know what I mean? I don't want him hanging out at your house because he keeps coming back and he's got like bruises. So now we've stopped that kind of primal kind of, I think it's, like training and it's
It is.
males and females training is different and at different stages of life. And I think
Mhm.
our young men, the training that was done from pubescence to puberty has been stunted based on all the social cueing, feminization of the boys, lowering their resiliency to pain, also, you know what I mean? So it's not the same.
In Cali, they say run that fade.
That's right. That's
Run
right.
that fade. You got a problem with me? Run that fade.
Yeah.
Right. Look, the third chief of the big three was Larry Hoover. He is the one who's
That's
supposed to
right.
give the reports. They call him the chairman of the board for a reason. His job is to report to the public. He's supposed to be reading like the State of the State address that the president give
Mhm.
for the tribes. That's Larry Hoover function. That's why he locked up. He ain't locked up for nothing he did. He locked up because
For his status,
COINTELPRO knew who he
because of his
was.
status, yeah. And also, from what I heard, and I want to verify this with you, I heard that it's kind of like there was a scene in Malcolm X's movie where they were standing outside the police. I think you know what I'm talking about, the police precinct, and Malcolm X was standing, and they just stand uniformed behind them, right? And yep, and when it was time, he told them to disperse, and they just walked away. And the lunar man was like, no black man should have that much
Not that
power.
much
From what I
power.
understand, that Larry Hoover was a reference to who he was. as a leader and as someone who had the ability to command his tribal base, but not even that, just multiple different people would have his respect and would come in his command. Because I heard they isolate him because they think he has some form of telepathy that controls the other men. Because every time they let him out amongst the main population, the men of all backgrounds, doesn't matter what it is, literally just gravitate towards him and bend under, not bend, but yield under his command. Is that true?
Well, you got to go back to 1974 when the great LSD treaty was formed. And the Brothers of the Struggle was born.
Okay.
Larry was good friends with Angel Bay Jeff Ford. They've been friends since teenagers. Okay. The government keep telling us they sworn enemies. And Larry inherited his spot as Solomon from King David, king of all kings. The CIA had him murdered through COINTELPRO. And so now they worry now is that one of their children is going to come up and take up that banner. Right? So they worried about Prince Wakita. They worried about the older Larry Jr. They worried about little Larry, and they worried about King David's son being able to command that influence. But they reserved in commanding that influence because the threat that we under, they can't really organize the younger men like their fathers did because the government involvement in our communities. Like, let's take King Low from the Four Corner Hustlers. The exact same MO they used to indict and give Jeff Ford all that time, they used the same MO on King Zoe. They sent in a guy to sell him a rocket launcher because he was beefing with the police. The police has been our enemy the whole time.
Their main goal was to, after the so-called emancipation of slaveries, were just basically to be groundsmen to control the Negroes walking around, to never make them feel safe or secure.
Right. So they started off as slave patrols.
Exactly.
So what do you do with all of these jobs of slave patrol if you change the system? Remember, they follow something called uniform commercial system. The appearance of legitimacy comes from the wearing of a uniform. Right? So now you got the Postmaster General in a uniform, and all of his cronies, called mailmen, is wearing uniforms. The gas guy coming to check your gas meter wearing a uniform. Everybody wearing a uniform. It's to give the illusion of legitimacy, straight out of the book The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. You put the shiny objects on their shirt to make them look more important than the rest of the people.
Amplify their purpose and visual.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that gives rise to the psychological study on the obedience to authority. That's a book reference, by the way, called Obedience to Authority. And they found that people would do some stuff under the order of authority that they wouldn't do of their own accord.
That's right.
Including murder. Now they got what they call Manchurian candidates, where they bypass the conscious mind using hypnosis based off Dr. Estabrook's hypnosis programs to activate a sleeper to commit a crime, and the government hands look clean. Those are called cat's paws. 48 laws of power. Always use a cat's paw.
That's right.
Right. The reason being is you don't want us to know that you the enemy. You want us to keep thinking we the enemy. So they villainized the term for tribe as gang. Gang mean tribe. Then they send in infiltrators in that look like us, but not us,
Absolutely.
to start wars with us, among us, so we fighting each other as warring tribes, and we can't never establish peace because we don't see the enemy in the midst because he looked like us.
Yeah, they create coups in every single nation. And they did it, the greatest coup, the greatest wonderment of MK Ultra, well, of Manchurian incidents was 9/11, to perpetrate a whole fraud of a narrative based on Arabs are the enemies, in the Middle East as enemies, to be able to have an excuse to go and clear what Israel couldn't do on its own. So it used 9/11 as a front in order to have the excuse and the validation and the support of the American people to go into the Middle East and do the clearing like they're doing today.
So the 9/11 thing was the brainchild of George Herbert Walker Bush. King of the Skull and Bones community. He was the one who he controls Barack Obama, Bill and Hillary Clinton. He controlled his sons, obviously. He controlled the dude that shot Ronald Reagan. Yeah, that's his illegitimate son, too.
Oh.
Put his picture next to Jeb when he was young, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You can't mistake them for nothing but brothers.
Holy cow. I'm going to do that.
The reason why they wanted to get rid of Reagan is because the things that George wanted to do, Reagan wasn't with that.
Wasn't on it, yeah.
Right. He was really, in his interest was to really try to clean up the government and to balance the books. But when he got there, most people don't remember when Reagan was running. It was originally supposed to be a governor out of Michigan as his running mate named Monahan. But on the day at the Republican convention that he announced it, out walks George Herbert Walker Bush.
Isn't it
he
kind
got
of like
his power from the assassination of JFK. He oversaw that as a CIA operation.
Absolutely, because JFK was going to talk about the power that the what are they called? The APAC. Well, they weren't called APAC at the time. That there was, money and things being facilitated and foreign powers having more control and influence over political parties. So Kennedy was going to cut off some of those lines and separate the foreign entities, what we call Israel today, from having any influence over American politics. And lo and behold, he just happens to be assassinated. And the person who replaced him was fully in line with everything that Israel would like and had instituted to make sure that they had a hand in politics. And not only that, each person in a political political position had an APAC representative always come and greet them once they come into that position.
So because he was Catholic, the Pope sent him Jesuits. When the Jesuits left, he came out and he did a speech called Separation of Church and State. When he got, I think that was after he gave the one about the secret society taking over the government. Right. Both of these speeches is available on YouTube. Now, there was more than one reason JFK got assassinated. One is silver certificate notes. He had reissued the silver certificates trying to do away with the Federal Reserve banking system and reinstitute the United States Treasury.
Because each of the dollars back in the days, for those who don't know, used to say it was worth a silver coin. And that was wiped away. All those bills were taken out and phased out.
Okay, yeah. That was one set of enemies is international bankers. If you want to know how they cut, get a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Yes, which should be in everybody's archives. Yes.
Right. Okay, now the next thing is the mafia, who his father was a Irish mafia man, had made all these deals with the Italian mafia and the Jewish mafia that they helped him get his son in office, that he would grant them favors. When John got in office, he said, I'm not granting them no favors. They crooks. Matter of fact, Bobby, get them. So now he didn't sign the death certificate of him and his brother unknowingly at this time.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Question,
now, yeah, go
question.
ahead.
What is your perception? Because there's a whole group of people online saying that Kennedy never died. Again, it was kind of like a fake death, but I think Kennedy, the original Kennedy, died, was assassinated, but his son, the one who died on the plane, that was a fake
Yeah, that
death.
was a whole psyop there.
Yes, yeah, okay,
But
okay.
JFK had a look-alike. He had a double. He actually took a picture at the White House with his double.
Oh.
And you
I
can
think that was
actually,
about, yes, 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 yes. I
okay,
think I remember, yeah.
so the reason why people think he's still alive is because just like you got people that's against us, you got people that's with us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they believe that they allowed that process to play out in order for us to be able to redeem later, right? So what happened after the assassination of JFK? LBJ got in and he signed the Indian Civil Rights Act.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right now, they know that over time they can diminish the power of the Indian Civil Rights Act, and what they produced out of that called affirmative action by declaring other people as what they call minority groups.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Taking
it
them further and
originally
further from
was
their indigenous
right.
pattern.
So
Mhm.
when it was for the Indians, we thought it was black civil rights. It was the Indian Civil Rights Bill.
Mhm, mhm,
Okay,
mhm.
now the first people that came in using those that wasn't us was Hispanics. After the Hispanics came the Asians.
Yeah.
After the Asians came the Arabs.
And wait, let me just stop you there because people need to realize that most universities, even though they say that Black people take up most of the affirmative action, in all of the colleges, most of the people taking up a lot of the scholarships for minorities, majority of them who benefit from it are Asians, Arabs, and Hispanics. Just
Mhm.
FYI. If you look at the number of brown people going to college based on some of the scholarships that are for minorities, it's nil compared to all others. That's why when they just pull back from some of these scholarships and these minority laws, the Asians got hit the hardest because they were benefiting the most. Go ahead.
Then the next group in the 80s that came in was gender groups
Oh yeah, yeah.
fighting for something called gay rights,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? Which was part of another agenda of the pedophile priest cult that hired a group of retired military generals to write a rollout program to normalize their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm just saying this as a statement of facts on the record. I don't care what somebody do in their bedroom as long as they ain't trying to do it in the bedroom with me.
Mm.
Oh, that ain't my business. But the reality of it is the influence on the children is the problem,
Absolutely. It
right?
was
Because
never lumped, it was never to par, that was never lumped with children initially. That's how they got it in. They slid it in under the guise it's an adult, you accept these are minorities that get
right.
subjugated to marginalization, what have you. And then they slowly brought that over and started to merge that in the educational system and start to open up clubs in high schools, LGBT clubs, and started to influence children through shows, adding that as a plausibility and a possibility that men and men should be together and children and girls and girls. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the now you watch doggone anything you watch, it's gonna be some fruity stuff going on that ain't kosher. That ain't you ain't supposed to be doing that on TV. They even got commercials now where you got men kissing each other in commercials.
Mhm,
In the 60s, they would have been executed
mhm. And
because
also,
it
yeah.
was that much intolerance for that lifestyle.
Mhm. And it's not, it was here, but now, like if you, because I'm by Mexico. Mexico now, when you watch we watch these movies and it's like telenovas, and you watch them and they never use that because a lot of the Latin culture was based on bravado, like Africa. They didn't allow that kind of like men on men, women on women. maybe women on women just as a more seductress kind of thing, but not so much men on men. But now when you watch telenovas, you're starting to see the implementation of homosexuality, a heavy implementation of homosexual men in a lot of the shows. And it never happened before.
Yeah. And somebody said like cartoons too. The first flamboyant cartoon character came on the USA Network at night. And he used to be flying around with his cape and his butt cheeks hanging out.
Yeah. But also let's add to, when we talk about the social engineering of acceptance of that, we have to realize there's a chemicalization that came in with the crack generation, where many people don't know that women who were influenced under the influence of crack, and crack was a purposeful bioweapon that was created by the Willy Wonka system that was implemented into urban communities because they had already done experimentations with rats and others and humans that showed that if a woman took crack, even before she was impregnated, it causes it messes with the hormonal base in the pregnancy. And that's where you see a spike of all these homosexual brown men now, based on that introduction of crack cocaine, which literally switched the sexual disposition of the children chemically in womb during that time. So now we're starting to see years later what happens when you start to introduce certain chemicals. Believe me, they had already done experimentation. They had the patent for it. They knew what it did, just like the gay bombs that they were putting in Afghanistan that were changing the disposition of the men all through there. And
as for the crack, the largest, if you go back to Behold the Pale Horse, William Cooper was explaining how George Herbert Walker Bush was using his family's oil rigs that was not subject to search for the transport of cocaine in massive amounts into America. That was started in the early 70s. Contemporary with his transport of large quantities of cocaine in the 70s, UCLA is trying to find alternate uses for the substance, and that's where they developed what's called crack. Crack was developed by scientists in UCLA to make the effects or to enhance the potency of the cocaine when you smoke it in rock form.
Causing more addiction, quicker addiction to it, because it was such a quick
with
high.
The culture of the 70s, coming off the free love and all of that, and they was passing cocaine out in Studio 105, I think 54, it was.
Studio 54.
Up in New York.
Yep.
Right. At Playboy, Playboy had clubs all over the country. And they had these private parties. They used to call it nose candy. And you always knew that from the flyer that it was going to be available, because in there it'll say all candy available. So whatever floats your boat, right? Which takes us to the Cosby case when he was tricking with them ladies, giving them Quaaludes. We don't know in 2020, 2010s, or the 2000s period that it was standard practice of people.
They all gave Quaaludes. Yeah, all of them. All of them were using Quaaludes.
Remember what Scarface told his wife in the movie?
What he said?
Your woman is so polluted with Quaaludes, you can't even have a fucking baby.
Oh! Yes.
Okay, so this was very common. And then they had the pills was T's and blues, which is t-shirts and blue jeans, uppers and downers. That was the 70s. Crystal THC was crystal meth.
Yep.
Right. All that stuff been trying to figure out how to get it into the community, because we had only a fringe group of people, a small percentage that would participate in that. But when it became a money-making scheme and we was in poverty, this is where your Iran-Contra take off. Now, remember, George Bush and Ronald Reagan got in off of the freeing the hostages from Iran platform.
Right. Yes, I remember that.
Right. So, and when Ronald Reagan was the sitting duck president, the interim president waiting to take office, Iran's supposed to release a whole bunch of the hostages,
Mm-hmm.
right? Most of us don't know that them hostages was in Arizona on an army base. They wasn't in Iran at all. They never was in Iran. But they used that footage from Arizona because Arizona is desert.
So it matched the terrain that they were trying
Yeah.
to uniformly create a smoke screen for.
So they made a
Wow.
deal with the Iranian government. Now, most of us don't know Saddam Hussein at this time has just been put in power a couple years before this by the CIA in Iraq. He was the #1 U.S. ally in the Middle East up until Iran-Contra blew up over here. Why? Because Iraq and Iran was in a bloody war. America began to sell guns to Iran, the enemy. America was swearing they was the enemy too, but they was selling them guns under
that's America. That's their thing. They'll call you an enemy, but they'll give you all the weapons necessary. Right?
Okay, yeah. So they armed them to fight against the Iraqis. What blew the lid off was the Iraqis was fighting with the Iranians and found that they was using American-made weapons. Okay, so what happened on the heels of that? At this time, you got 2 detectives. One of them was the original investigator into Biggie case, Russell Poole. And the other one, I forgot his name, but he came to a public meeting and was trying to tell them the CIA was pushing this dope into the community. Okay, now, when they start investigating to find out, because he said it publicly now, it's on the public record that the police investigator is saying that the government is selling the drugs. They discover something called the Iran-Contra affair.
That's right.
Where they was bringing the drugs into America, selling them on the streets, using the money to buy munitions from the United States military to sell to Iran. That's the only connection with Iran and Contras, because they didn't even associate. The Contras is in South America. The co-defendant, the only one that got some real time out of the whole Iran-Contra affair, he didn't get arrested immediately. He got arrested a couple years later, named Manuel Noriega from Panama.
Yes.
The only trial in U.S. history that's classified as top secret.
That's right. They won't release that file. And
because in that file, they find out that George Herbert Walker Bush, director of the CIA, was the one who put Manuel Noriega in power, and he used Nicaragua. He was using Panama to transport drugs from Nicaragua into America.
And that's why Nicaragua had that weird rogue war at one point. It was probably stimulated by like us going in there causing a little bit of, so to kind of cloak it a little bit.
Right. So they had the Sandinistas and the Contras fighting each other in Nicaragua. So while this is going on, right, the American people is watching the trial or the Senate hearings in like 87. They thought it was going to stop George Bush from getting elected president.
Okay.
So they get caught selling drugs. Now, in the United States, there is a law. It's called a culpability law. If the government solicits you to commit a crime, and you commit a crime, and the government is your co-defendant, you can't be prosecuted.
Absolutely. Yes.
Everybody with a dope case, their co-defendant is the U.S. government. Let that sink in. Because the government has been the ones bringing the dope in the whole time.
Distributing it, transporting it, delegating what locations to distribute it for, for whatever reasons. Yeah.
If we knew about the opium wars, right? This is what caused Mao Zedong to rise to power. The British was going into China and they was creating what's called opium dens all over the country. And wars broke out in the transporting of heroin or opium at that time. It wasn't heroin yet.
Yeah.
Right. So then they had what's called the Opium Wars. The Opium Wars gave birth to something called the French Connection. The French Connection was transporting China white, but in the movie, I think it was cocaine. But cocaine don't come from France or Asia. It comes from South America.
Yeah.
And some of the islands produce the coca leaf too. Yeah. Right. Now, while all of this is going on, we over here oblivious. Walking around la-di-da in fool's paradise.
Because remember, most news, when you go abroad, you actually hear more news about your country than you'll hear from inside your country. So we're usually just like, we think have free speech and we can delegate and say things out loud and no, it's everything censored from inside and from outside.
You know, the first time I found out about 9/11, it was a show on a Canadian channel called The Fifth Estate. It's like Nightline or Dateline over here. And about 4 months after 9/11, they did a whole broadcast tracking down everything. That's the first people that I found out was telling us that the government was behind it and it wasn't no hijackers.
That's probably where we got the first leak. And then also the 7 Israelis, I'm not sure if there were 6 or 7 Israelis that were celebrating, that was on the news. And when 9/11 went down, all of the floors were Jewish companies, all got a heads up. Obviously, they got the insurance policy, the guy who bought the building right before it happened and got the insurance policy too. Okay. So that's when we found out they were probably the leak, because the person who said they saw the Israelis celebrating, that it was a woman, I think. She reported
they was
to
in the white van. They had jumped out the white van. Now remember, also white vans came into play in the transporting a massive amount of gold under the tunnels out of the World Trade Center. One of them,
when they got rid of all of they got they emptied out all of those gold places where they stored the gold.
So one of the vans, some kind of way was decommissioned in the tunnel and they left it there and it was still full of gold. I mean, they was in a hurry to get away. They didn't have time to switch the gold to the other vehicles. So it was also a white van. Then there's another lady who did the controlled demolition investigation.
Oh, yeah.
And she found the boxes of explosives, the video footage from the garage from before it, like a couple of months before, they was doing midnight repairs all night long after the building was closed for like 3 or 4 months.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and she found the
boxes
boxes and all that.
Remember the accounts that the firemen, the policemen, the New York City cops, before they totally swept the internet, took it offline, the first thing they said is they heard the booms, the explosions at the base of the building. And these men would know, because there's no way that a plane would hit the top of a building and it could collapse an entire building, especially with all that steel. It would have to collapse from the base, like any other demolition in New York City.
Well, here go the problem too with the plane causing the crash, because the way that we don't know about the Empire State Building got struck by a Cessna back in like the 20s or the 30s. This was before the World Trade Center was built. So because of that, the World Trade Center was built to withstand a direct hit from an airplane on purpose. That's why it had an exoskeleton and then it had an internal tube. Right? So if a plane did run into the building, then they say, well, the fuel from the plane melted the columns. No, it didn't.
No,
the fuel, jet fuel doesn't burn hot enough to melt steel.
Yeah. And when you see
thermite do.
Yeah, exactly. But when you see how it fell, you've seen any demolition. I'm a New York girl. You've seen any demolition. You kind of sometimes you get to watch it. The way that the building fell was exactly how a full demolition happens. Nothing was non-uniform. It wasn't as ununiformed. Everything was uniformed in how it fell with any other demolition. Yeah.
You know, the first thing when I was watching it when it was happening, I was like, it don't seem like the building should have fell like that. It seemed like the top should have tipped
It
over.
should have tipped over. It would have cracked over if it was normal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the next thing that got my attention that made me say, what the was building number 7 that no plane hit
And it collapsed.
and
And
it
I
collapsed.
I work down there. So yeah, yeah, yeah. And what's crazy is because you use the propaganda, because remember they build the narrative, they control the narrative, so it's all mind control programming. They perpetually say something over and over again, show you several scenes, tell you what you need to think. Which remember, Richard Pryor said when he was cheating on his girl, he was like, "You gonna believe me, or you gonna believe your lying eyes?" Okay, so people were seeing things that they knew very well weren't exactly how they were describing and constantly repetitiously saying. And then they also used trauma programming because people were so traumatized. New Yorkers didn't know what they were seeing. A lot of family members died. People did not come home. The police officers were in shock. You use the trauma. Trauma is wonderful at compartmentalizing the brain. And that's how you use the MK Ultra is you create a trauma response that compartmentalizes the brain and it takes away from all rationality. So anything that you're programming the brain with is going to be nicely nestled into the part of your brain that accepts it as truth. So
Yeah.
they did a wonderful thing. And meanwhile, no one used the grants, and we don't want to even talk about the Pentagon, which was never hit by a plane. And at the time, I had a friend who was working for the Navy and showed me the image of a missile launcher in the lawn turning directly at the Pentagon, one of their own missile launchers who hit it. And that's why you never saw an image of a plane on the Pentagon. They never showed it to you because they couldn't show it to you.